Good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in 1981 and celebrating our 40th anniversary, because this is 2021. I would like to welcome our viewers and listeners worldwide and our live Zoom studio audience to this evening's program in our Root and Branch Association Limited English Language Conference and Lecture Series, broadcasting from Jerusalem, Israel. And now celebrating our second quarter century for our lecture series, having just concluded the first quarter century from January 1995 until December 2020. Today is Tuesday, April 27, 2021 in the Gregorian calendar, and it is the 15th day of Iyar in the Hebrew Israelite calendar. We are broadcasting from the city of Israel, the land of Israel, city of God, Jerusalem, hill of the priests, Givat Hananiah, Abu Tur, overlooking Mount Moriah, where the third and final Israelite temple, we believe, of Jerusalem, will soon be under reconstruction and stand forever. As per the prophet Ezekiel's vision, please see the biblical book of Ezekiel, chapters 40 through 48. Now, our speaker for this evening is a longtime friend and colleague of mine. I really shouldn't start. If I'll go into it now, we'll have no talk. So I have to leave that. Miss Laura Leadbetter is going to speak about her life as a drama therapist. I think we could also use some therapy these days. And to introduce her will be my longtime friend and colleague, Dr. Les Glassman. Now I'm going to hand it over to Les, who's going to introduce Laura.
Well, Lowell, thank you so much. And Lowell, I want to take this opportunity and also wishing you a happy birthday for your upcoming birthday.
Thank you.
Laura, it's really an honor and a privilege to have you here this evening. And what an amazing topic, my life as a drama therapist. Wow. So I'm just going to give a short bio because, as Lowell said, otherwise we could spend the whole night just speaking about your, your achievements and what you do. But you're a registered drama therapist and you got your degree through Hunter College. You have a master's of science in counseling from Mercy College in Duxbury, Westchester County in New York. And you've also been involved in the circus. You know, these are things that the kids dream of. But you used to do a Spanish web, which you go on a wire and you do aerial ballet, which sounds absolutely frightening and fascinating. Amazing. And you come from a very distinguished family. Your mom was also very involved in the circus. She did rodeos and she was involved in equestrian with horses. And your grandfather was a blacksmith. And interesting, he had a tremendous close connection to Gene Autry. These are stories one couldn't even make up. It's unbelievable. But you work now as a creative artist and a drama therapist in Yonkers with psychiatric patients and patients needing your help. And, you know, it's going to be so fascinating to hear your life as a drama therapist. So without any further ado, could you enlighten us into the amazing work that you do?
Thank you, Les. I've worked in different arenas in my life, and I was fortunate to have the training as a drama therapist at Hunter College in New York City while I was getting my master's at Mercy College in New York, under the guidance of a dear theater professor, Dr. Pat Sternberg, who took me on. I was her last drama therapy student for supervision at Hunter College in New York City. And I knew, with my background being in the circus and the love of theater and the arts, I wanted to use drama as a way to provide healing to seniors in nursing homes, the population that I'm working with now in mental health. And my dream came true and I became a drama therapist. So now currently I'm working at St. Joseph's Hospital in Yonkers. I'm very fortunate to attend Manhattan College here in the Bronx, which offers a program that I can take the required coursework. I'm not getting a degree from Manhattan College, but I'm doing what Albany, New York State wants me to do to be licensed officially as an LMHC, licensed mental health counselor, would be the initials behind my name once I pass my state exam and complete 2 internships, which I'm about to begin this fall, and do 300 hours for the state, and then do another 300 hours and be on my way to maybe do private practice or continue clinical work in a hospital. So I'm really fortunate that it's all coming together like a jigsaw puzzle. And I'm fortunate that I have the health, and with the pandemic going on, it's been very stressful and times have been hard. And they need more mental health counselors with the way of the world of what we're going through right now. And I just hope and pray that we get through this pandemic and I can continue my journey and do all the work I have to do. I have 2 more weeks left of this last graduate course that I'm doing online through Manhattan College. We were not allowed to attend. We're doing it virtually. So by the fall, I'll be going once a week for my internship class. We hope to all, be on campus and have the college running up full-time capacity, but we're yet to see what's going to happen. But I'm thankful that I met Lowell through his father at the Hebrew home here in Riverdale. I was blessed to meet Lowell when he came over from Israel, and his father was like a grandfather to me. And I love doing the storytelling with his dad, and I have great memories, and it's been wonderful. And I'm blessed to have had those memories and give him the storytelling and the wisdom. And we launched the Laura and Lowell show while he was here, and we had a few stories written up in the Riverdale Press, and we did many interviews, which was quite a joy in my life to have that opportunity to hear so many folks' stories and the creativity that involved with it. And I also am a member of the Screen Actors Guild. I failed to mention that. I finally got in the union, and I've done some roles, and it was an interesting journey, but I've put it on hiatus. I still keep my membership, but my goal is to get this license. And I'm just focused right now on this journey that I have with my education, but I'm thankful, and I'm thankful to have this interview with both of you, and thank you for having me. Is there any other questions that maybe you're curious about?
There is, Laura. Can I just ask you, they say that laughter is actually the best medicine.
Yes.
And if you could relate some of the stories or how you have helped patients through laughter and through telling stories or hearing stories from them. I think patients relating their stories to you and you giving listening to them and becoming part of their lives, I think that's a tremendous therapy for the patient as well.
It is. I love the laughter. Growing up with the circus and clowning and humor therapy, I have so many memories. And I just got a book sent to me from a clown friend of mine in Sarasota, Florida. And he wrote it all about his life as a clown. And his title of the book was, "Is it God or is it destiny?" And I thought it was just so powerful. And when I share that journey with my patients in the hospital and the humor that comes up when we role play and we reverse roles and we act out monologues and we do improvisations, there's so many stories and there's so much laughter, which is healing and it helps them while they're in the hospital, because we're dealing with real life stories that, yes, it is the play space, it's the arena that I'm creating in the moment, but I'm allowing them to act out another role in their life, which helps them heal with what they're facing. Could be trauma, could be bereavement. There's so many different, mental health issues that come up. And even with this COVID, the losses that we all maybe have known somebody that have passed from it. So the humor is very important, to laugh and have that joy, because it releases endorphins in the body and tension. And I'm all about wellness. And I have to do a presentation in my final class about a certain type of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy, which uses humor and wellness to heal. And they found, especially with adolescents, it helps. This is a popular therapy that is really working. And also with borderline personality disorders, which is a tough population to work with. I'm learning about all these different populations that I work with. So humor is a big component of healing. Yes.
Can I just mention something, Laura? And this is something absolutely quite fascinating that I've only discovered in the last couple of months. Having actually been able to interview quite a few survivors, Holocaust survivors, there was a thread that some of the survivors actually mentioned that when their heads were shaven and they were tattooed, they actually laughter. Some of them actually, with their friends, they would like make a joke at their situation, and that made them feel human, because they were made to feel totally as a number and inhuman. And here, by them laughing, it gave them an individuality, that they could laugh amongst their friends and feel that, wow, we still are human. And they mentioned that it was a tremendous therapy for them, going through this tremendously horrendous and hair-raising and harrowing ordeal, but because they still kept their sense of humor, it actually gave them the strength to continue. And there's a Dr. Chaya Ostroff I met, she's a author and she's a lecturer, and she wrote a book as Laughter as Therapy in the Holocaust, which is absolutely phenomenal, because not laughing at the Holocaust, but people in the Holocaust, how they use laughter to just better their lives in a way, and it gave them the strength to continue. So this is just
Laughter
something
is
that
so
I've
important.
discovered very recently.
Yes, laughter is, I know that, Lowell, with your dad, we used to have laughs. He would make me laugh, and he would create these puppets out of bottles and make collage puppets, and they told stories,
Right, yes.
and they were funny, and I was taking his puppets all over Westchester to different nursing homes.
Right. I'll throw in a little here now,
Sure.
because I remember my father, as we both know, spoke fluent street Spanish from his practice in El Barrio, the ghetto, from 1952 in the South Bronx. And I remember that when I would visit him at the Hebrew home, that he would speak in Spanish, which they loved, to the young ladies who worked there, many of whom came from Central and South America, Mexico, and the islands. And I was horrified, and I said to my mother, my father would tell them dirty jokes. And I thought, how can he do that? And my mother said, you don't understand the culture. They love it. And he can get away with it because an old guy doesn't get slapped, or they thought this was very entertaining. Didn't bother them at all. They weren't that racy. But I said, really, Mommy, Daddy's talking like that to the young ladies? My mother said, you don't understand the culture. They think this is hysterically funny. They're not shocked. They think it's funny. For them, that was humor therapy, that a 97-year-old man is telling them wisecracks, but that he could do it in Spanish, which is their language. So Laura, could you say something? I mean, I have so many questions where to start, but let's start at the beginning. You do rodeos for autistic children.
Yes, I did.
And could you
Yeah.
say something about that? Where on the spectrum are they in terms of autism? Are they severely disturbed, non-functional, or are they on the higher ends of the spectrum, like savants or all of the above? And how do you do that? I think once a year, at least.
Well, I did low, but when the pandemic hit, that all got
Right.
wiped out. So to answer your question, I worked across the whole spectrum with all of the above, what you just had mentioned, from severe to highly, even genius level at some. I had adults. I just didn't have kids either. I had all ages. So it was I did the roping with them at a farm upstate New York,
Right.
and it was a big event once a year, and they loved being able to show their parents how they could master the art of roping and lassoing and say, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm a cowboy, I'm a cowgirl, look at me." And they had this teaching horse, Peggy, which they would get on, and they would be afraid of real horses, but the wooden horse, they could learn how to steer it. It would light up. So that's creative self-expression, was getting them over the trauma of a big, 800-pound horse that they were afraid of, and just mastering a skill to show their family and their peers. It was a great experience to do that. And I love carrying that Western heritage of my mother being a cowgirl. It's funny, Lowell, that we're talking about this because last Saturday was the day she passed away. And I gave my brother a big 8x10 photo of her on a white horse in Tucson, Arizona. And he was just so touched. He said it was the best birthday present I could have ever given him. And I've been thinking of her and her cowgirl legacy, and I miss all those days when I used to be able to do the Pegasus show. And it's just been a different world now since COVID hit. It's just different, and I miss it. But I have those memories, like you said, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to work with that population.
Well, I don't think that the restrictions will go on forever, and sooner or later, people will get back to rodeos and the Pegasus Foundation. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, they're allowing people. They're starting to resume their programming again up at the farm, so it's slowly opening up right now. So maybe in the future, I can plan to do something and get back in the saddle, as they say. Remember when we did that interview at the Twisted Bit, Lowell, with Danny?
I certainly do. And those, they're all up on our channel. As far as I'm concerned with our show, as I said when we met in 2012, give it 10 years. We're just getting started. The technology caught up with us, and
Yes.
I believe that we're just getting started. Now, I have a question again, so many. Why horses? Pets, the word pet, you pet the dog, the cat. Why? What is special about horses? There have been books and films made about horses and their unique ability to relate to emotionally, and well, we're all emotionally impaired people. Why horses? Why not ducks? I mean, all animals are wonderful. What is it about the horse?
Well, the horses have been predators, as you know, since their existence. They've been in wars. They've been able to survive. They have a natural instinct inside of them that protects other people and themselves and their species. So there's some very special connection with horses that they found through research, through equestrian therapy right now with veterans coming back from wars with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I did a training at Pegasus with just doing groundwork with the horse, bonding with the horse, petting the horse, walking with the horse. It wasn't about teaching the veterans how to ride. It was developing that trust and that bond, because horses are very smart animals. And like I said, their sense of hearing when there's danger, they know when a storm is coming, they know when there's trouble, if there's other animals or if there's danger. So they're very aware, and it teaches us humans to be very aware of our surroundings, to focus on that, concentrate, looking at the horse in the eye, knowing to hear their heartbeat, putting your hand on their chest to hear that heart, to feel our heartbeat. So we're on a ground and we're supported by the ground, but we learn to bring that feeling upward through our body, and it's so healing. It helps the veterans open up. Maybe they've been shut down or they can't express themselves, and the horse brings it out of them, and they have a good cry and they start to talk and they start to bond with the animal. So like with children with disabilities, with the autism, with different developmental disabilities, the horses teach trunk control, support, posture, self-esteem, confidence building skills. So there's so much research that it's so therapeutic, and it's so wonderful to build some people can't talk to others, but they can talk to the horse. They can relate to the animal in a special bond, which is so, it's a miracle. It's wonderful. I've seen it help people, and I know from being around horses how much they help me when I look at them or stroke them and ride them. And I miss that. I miss riding when I used to go riding. I did some Western riding and English, and I like Western riding better because it's free and you just get on the horse, whereas English, it's a whole discipline with the helmet and the gear and the process of learning English riding.
I
But
have so many questions, but I'm going to defer to Les because
so
I know he does too.
Yeah. So I've got a question with regard to animals. In our area in Jerusalem, in Beit Hagan, where I live, there's an old man that we see every day walking, and he had a little dog and on a leash, and he'd walk up and down the road. And then one day I saw him and the dog wasn't with him. And I asked him, what happened to your dog? And he said, no, he died. And it took him about a month, and now he's got another dog. And I think that dog, him walking with that dog, he relates so much to that dog that I think it just gives him company, and it's such a wonderful thing to see. And I think, and this is my personal view with children, when you take them to like a petting zoo, or if a child has got a pet animal, a pet dog in particular, I think it can also be, and you'd be the expert in this, but a tremendous therapeutic for the children to relate to animals. Have you had that in your experience?
well, yes, it's funny, Les, you're talking about this. My professor, who has her own private practice and is a psychologist, says she brings her dog for the children. And when the dog's there, she doesn't exist. They talk more to the dog than talking to her. She's not even in the picture. So the dog does open them up, and they bond with the animal in a special way. And so the dog becomes the therapist and the dog becomes the healer. And I know I have my own little 16-year-old dachshund. He's my best friend, my companion. I used to bring him to the Hebrew home to visit Lowell's father. We did pet therapy. All the seniors would say, well, Laura, it's nice to see you, but where's Dusty? We really would love to see Dusty. It's not that we don't like you, but Dusty was always, where's Dusty?
So Laura, I'll just mention, we did a program, Lowell had an amazing guest on with Hebrew as influence in world languages. But the word dog in Hebrew is kelev, which is from the root of lev, which is a heart, and that's what a dog is. It has a very unique heart, and there's a reason why it's man's best friend.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, there's so much joy that you get and love that it's unconditional. They don't talk back to you. They wait for you. They're loyal to you. I can leave for the day and go to work and leave a little bone in his kennel, and I'll come home and he'll still have the bone there. He wants to eat it because I'm back, and he feels comfortable to eat the little milk bone that I left. Yeah, it's funny. They have their ways. I mean, he's so smart, and I'm just blessed he's still going strong, and I give him the very best care. That I took him on an outing. We took a ride to the pet store on Central Avenue over near Epstein's Low, and he got his canned food and his goodies, and he was enjoying the sunshine through the window in the car, and he was my little co-pilot, so it was wonderful.
Laura,
Lovely.
could you say something, this is coming back to me slowly but steadily, about the father of drama therapy? We've discussed that, the doctors or
Dr.
whoever it was.
Marino,
Right.
Dr. Marino.
When did it begin and get the name drama therapy? Was it someone from Finland or someplace?
No, he was, he lived in
England?
he lived in Beacon, New York, up in the Hudson Valley, and he had an
Yes.
institute called the Marine. If you Google the Marino
I'll write it
Institute,
down. Marino
you'll
Institute.
read about Dr. Marino and how he started doing psychodrama, and how he had patients up in Beacon, and it was a haven for, you know, all types of folks. It became an institute, and it became very famous. And for years he was doing drama therapy, and they just took it a step higher, and they started doing more research. And then there were many people that got on board and started writing and publishing. And then it became a major at NYU. And I tried to audition for that program, but I did not get in, purposely because it was very expensive, and the director of the program knew I would be better off
Right,
at
I
Hunter.
remember that.
And it's a CUNY system, so I could afford it. And I was getting the same training as what I would have gotten at NYU. And I was blessed. And I just think that's a really good question, because Dr. Marino, he made the way for drama, for the creative arts, and it's wonderful. I'm blessed to have that training, and Pat Sternberg, who took me on as her last student, and just the experiences I've had, Lowell.
When was that? When did Dr. Marino do his work? Are we going back 100 years?
No, he started in the 1950s.
1950s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was the use of drama as therapy, so I mean, for many years, people play charades in families. The role-playing children do that. How far back does it go in other forms where it would have had another name, where
Well, this
community
book,
theater?
Drama as Therapy, Phil Jones, it started in the UK too. I should say the UK is big in drama therapy, and they might have been doing it just around or before Dr. Marino, but it's a very important therapy in England. And Phil Jones wrote this book, and he also wrote, I'll show you another book that he wrote, which is Drama as Therapy, Theater as Living.
Mm-hmm.
And they're wonderful techniques, and I'm blessed to have those techniques. And sociodrama, Pat wrote Who's in Your Shoes? Pat Sternberg. So there's a lot of research, and theater as conflict resolution. Pat wrote this, using theater when one has conflicts, because life is all about conflict constantly.
Yeah. Are Phil Jones and Patricia Sternberg still alive?
Pat passed away about 7 years ago, but Phil Jones is still alive, living in England. Yes.
What is your experience with drama therapy in the prison system? To what extent is that?
I never did any work. A lot of my colleagues do work in that system. That's, but I do get patients at the hospital that have been in the system. I have one man who did like 30 years. So they're building new lives, and my colleagues like it. They find it challenging. It's a fascinating area, but I never had worked in that area. I've always worked nursing home and hospitals. Yeah.
In the drama therapy, to what extent does it involve speaking as opposed to doing something like bouncing a basketball or running around or opening and closing a door, as opposed to just people talking to each other? To what extent does it involve music, for example? What are the, is that Dusty? Or is that the bird? I just heard.
It's a bird clock. It goes off on every hour. It rings on with different bird sounds every hour.
Lovely. It's very nice.
But
So,
the drama therapy uses art, it uses music, it uses role-playing theater. It uses so many different modalities to help people. It's not limited to just drama. There's ways to use music. There's ways to use art therapy. There's ways to use storytelling. There's so many different modalities.
I would imagine it would be, unless someone is born with it or is trained in it, improvisational theater, most people are a little bit, that's one of the reasons people get drunk and take drugs, to become less inhibited, to do stuff where they might be self-conscious about. I'm talking about normal spectrum stuff. That it would seem to me that something structured like this would allow regular people to be able to do things that if one wasn't born into it as a born actor, an actress, a comedian, say, okay, look, put on a hat and pretend you're Charlie Chaplin. I don't know what it is. That I would imagine most people would react very well to it. No one forces anyone to do something, but I would imagine that most people presented with it at any age would say, wow, that's a lot of fun. I can feel silly, but it's okay because this is the game we're playing, like Monopoly or something.
Well, it's also helpful to just do for fun. I mean, it helps you grow and learn about yourself in ways and explore roles you were never familiar with in life. And it opens you up to take on that imaginary role and have the feedback and the witnessing from others and expression and the poetry and the writing, creative writing comes from it. And they can, one can take bad experiences in life and rebuild their lives just by doing these creative therapy exercises. They're wonderful.
I'm going to defer again to Les because I know he has his own questions, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation with mine.
Lowell, your questions are amazing, and Laura, thank you so much. It's just such a pleasure to have you and to listen to you and your experiences. But Laura, growing up in the circus, were you a very small child when you were growing up, and were your parents very involved? I know your mother was very involved in the circus, but did you spend a lot of time?
Well, my mother really didn't do circus. She just did rodeos, but we lived around families that were circus performers. So I was exposed to families that traveled in the circus where I grew up in Sarasota, Florida. And when she met my father and settled down and got out of show business, she had those memories. And I had 10 years of those memories before she passed away. She was 36 when I lost her, and I was 10. And then her brother, my uncle, came down to Florida to raise my brother and me up here in New York. And that's how I made it up here to New York. So that was my base of being introduced to the circus world and having dear friendships and having the chance to see them when they came to New York. And it was like home week. I would connect with families that I knew since I was a little girl and keep those relationships going. And it was a special, gift. I know, like you said, children wish they could run away and join the circus. It's like a fantasy dream come true, but I grew up around it, and I lived it, and I got a chance to quit my job in my 20s and go on the road and travel with the circus and get it out of my system and do it actually. And we did small towns in upstate New York, and we traveled all over doing school shows. So it was a wonderful experience. And I was glad and blessed that I had that experience to do that.
And Laura, do you think that there's still a future for the circus? Do you think it's as popular now? Well, before the COVID, but do you think it's still popular as it was in the past?
In ways now that it's going to change, because they've found that it's still powerful and it's still respected as an art form, and you have to really love and have that skill and practice. So they've set up circus schools all across the United States, and they keep growing, and they find the after school programming helps different children and their self-esteem and confidence. They even work with youth detention centers with kids that have been in trouble, and they find circus arts helps them. And so it is going to always still remain and continue to grow. It might not grow as much as the days when you had different traveling circuses going all over the US and performing, and Ringling Brothers no longer exists. They used to come into Madison Square Garden every year, and they stopped that with the animal rights activists. And it changed the industry in that capacity, but it's still going to be an art form like theater and dance, because there's so much history to circus and there's so much to learn about it. But that's a good question.
Now I have am I live? Yes. Again, historically, we've discussed this, and I'm asking the question because I didn't know any of this until I met you and started to look into it. Could you say something about Commedia dell'arte, the history of the circus? How far back do circuses go? The Romans talked about bread and circuses. I mean, I know that's something you know something about, and very few people do.
Well, Commedia dell'arte is an art form of different clowning and theater techniques in the theater. And it goes back in Greece and Italy and all over Europe. It was that was showbiz, that was theater back in those days. And there's so much different styles of clowning that came from that era of Commedia dell'arte. You have the Auguste clown face, you have the different styles of clown makeup. And it's just a historical art form that is very fascinating. And I got a little exposure to Commedia dell'arte. I failed to mention, I went to Sarah Lawrence College in Bronxville, and I studied a year in theater there. And I did Romeo and Juliet, Commedia dell'arte style, with Ellen Stewart from La Mama Theater in New York City, who had a very famous Commedia dell'arte theater. She came up and turned Romeo and Juliet into a circus, and I did my Spanish web act with Harlequin. I was dressed as a Harlequin clown doing an aerial act up in the air. So that was a great experience at Sarah Lawrence College to have that Commedia dell'arte experience.
Les, I defer to you.
Okay, and Laura, you just mentioned, and I think it's a very controversial subject with the animal rights, because that affects
Right.
the rodeo as well. It affects so many things, and sometimes one can go so total overboard that you destroy everything in the process. But like you said, now there's certain circuses that have closed down because animals in the circus was a tremendous big part of what the circus is. There was also in South Africa, the Boswell Winkie Circus, which unfortunately also has closed up. I don't know if that was due to the animal rights issue or just because demographics and things have changed. But you being passionate about animals and you being passionate about circus, you like basically in the middle. In your experiences, you know, being in the rodeo and growing up where there were circuses, did you feel that there was any abuses to the animals, or that they shouldn't be included in circus, or the rodeo should continue? What is, I know it's maybe an unfair question to ask you, but you were there on the spot. You've lived it, and what do you
Well,
think the future should
I
be?
can't vouch for the whole industry, but
Sure,
the
sure.
people I knew that had
Yeah.
animals were very good to their animals.
Yeah.
And there have been, you know, performers, I guess, that they captured that did abuse some of the animals. And it was unfortunate because that hurts the whole industry across the board once you get a few bad apples that are not treating animals the right way and not caring for them the right way. So it was very difficult, but I know that some of my circus friends still are performing with, they might not be traveling with the pandemic and different states they're not allowed in with their elephants, but they just opened a conservatory in Florida, a sanctuary where people come to see, like a zoo, to see and learn about elephants. So on the other hand, it's opened their world in another creative form. They continue to educate people and provide that joy to people because they take very good care of their elephants. So I just feel it was unfortunate to have that happen, you know, how it affected circuses to not be able to bring elephants in to do shows on circuses. I was in White Plains, New York, when the elephants had their last performance and the whole audience just cried because they always went to the county center every year to see the circus, and the elephants were always there. And the elephants were weeping too with the audience, like they understood that it was sad. They're never going to see the elephants come to New York at the county center anymore. So it's a good question you asked. Thank you.
Because, you know, Laura, it's also, it goes
Laura.
further. It goes for aquariums. It goes for a whole broad spectrum of, you can call it entertainment, but it also brings children into contact with the animal world in a very positive way. And by banning or saying that it's not good for the animals, in a way, you could be a little bit short-sighted because you're depriving the children of having this connection, this very special connection that they do not
Thank
that
you.
they had with the animals.
Yeah, I just remember that moment. And it was so powerful because I took pictures and I just was so sad to, you know that I would never see that circus come again with the elephants, but everything changed when COVID hit. It just like, it wiped out all my circus friends with traveling and business, and they had to find other ways to be creative, to put on another hat and use another role to, as drama therapy, we learn to do is how to recreate and go on and know what anyone in life who has challenges can get help and make up for lost time and learn and move on in life. That's the power of it. It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question, I guess. When we met in 2012, the issue, there was a big issue, a big fight in New York City at the time regarding the horses and buggies around Central Park.
Yes.
I don't remember in 2012 was the Mayor Bloomberg, what his position was, nor do I remember how the issue was resolved. Are there still horses and buggies going around Central Park?
Yes. they're still there, and I don't think they'll ever stop them. I could be wrong, but for now, they're not giving rides like they used to with COVID, but they're still there and they're still being taken care of.
So the battle, I mean, there was a group that wanted to stop it again on the ground that the horses are not treated well.
Right.
And like you said before, with anything,
Yeah.
even if most people in any field are okay, there's a few rotten apples, whatever the industry is, which give a bad name to everybody else, because they're the ones who get, as when I was in the archive department at CBS Television Network News, that was 1988, the expression was, good news is no news. So nobody wanted to talk about that. Could you say something about the coursework to become a registered drama therapist? What kind of coursework does a person have to do, whether it's a field work or papers written or classes? What is the core classes that a person must take as opposed to electives in order to become registered?
That's a good question, Lowell. Like NYU and Hunter College have a very good foundation of coursework, from different courses, from theory to learning techniques and different applications of drama therapy. So there's an intense coursework schedule. I remember when I did the program at Hunter, it was like getting a second master's all over again. It was grueling. And not only that, I used to have to go down to 8th Avenue and do training with a group, socio-drama training, and do these role enactments and do weeks and like 2 years of that. It was grueling, and doing the supervision with Pat. It was in a very intense program. It took me almost 5 years to become a drama therapist because I was doing it in little segments, working full time, going to school at night, doing the hours with the group training, and then you have to put it all together with a supervisor that's taking you on, a board certified trainer. It's called the BCT. And some of my drama therapists do that for new people that would like to become a drama therapist, and they have to review all of their work. So they sit down and they go through everything and say, she now has everything that it takes to become a drama therapist. So I remember all that hard work paid off. And I remember when Pat got sick and went to Florida and passed away, the board certified trainer had to finish and take me on to complete my requirements. And every 2 years, we have to submit continuing education units to the board to keep abreast of all the new studies and things that are going on in drama therapy. So I'm due this June to review my 2 years and submit my 30, or I think, yeah, it's 30 CEUs of workshops and other credits to keep my registry, because I have to do that every 2 years. But that's a good question. Yeah.
I pass it over to Les now.
And Laura, what advice would you give for aspiring future drama therapists? Kids boys and girls that actually want to go into this field. It's a very important field to go into. What advice would you give them? What should they prepare for, or what if they do want to go? Is there special requirements, or do they have to have a special interest in helping people? What advice would you give?
Well, I'll use myself as an example, being that I love circus and I love theater and performing. I knew that I wanted to be able to still perform, but I'm performing in a different arena now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking what I did and what I love, and I'm putting it into what I wanted, which was to become a drama therapist. and use it to heal folks from different populations, from nursing home to clinical hospital. Like you said, Lowell, it's powerful, and it's the stories that matter. It's getting one to open up and tell those stories. So I think it's a love that you have to have, that drive to want it and feel it and do it, because it's real, and we meet all kinds of people in this world with different challenges, and it's finding that niche. You know, I love seniors and I love working with them, and I love working in mental health right now, because I do get seniors. I don't get just young people, but with all different challenges, from the correctional side of things to different diagnosis, and it helps people. It really is powerful. So I really think one has to really want it and know they want it to do it.
Now it's my turn to ask a question, make a comment, which is that if we look back over the last 200 years, let's go back farther. When my father, who, when he was a boy, his life was the libraries. That's what he loved to do, read. And when I would visit him and he would go through these 400 or 500 page novels, and I'd say, Daddy, if you could do what you wanted for the rest of your life and you would live forever, would you do what you're doing now? Were you lying here going through a book? He said, yes. I said, would you get bored? He said, no. And I don't usually have the patience to read. They were like a Tom Clancy kind of thriller or historical books. He told me that in the old caravans, in the old days, a very important and respected part of the caravan was the storyteller.
Yes, I remember him saying that all the time.
Oh, you remember too. And at night, you're around the campfire.
Yes.
And that was one of the most important, because what did you do? You didn't radio, TV,
That's right,
smartphones, or I call them stupid boxes. So they had that. Then advancing a few thousand years later, in the 19th century, one of the reasons people like Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters were so popular was that there was a certain advance in, I think, gas lighting or something before electric. People could stay up longer. And well, what did you do? So you sat together and, well, someone could play piano if you had a piano. They would read stories to each other. You had to have stories to read. So you had that. And then I think that things have gone sort of into a dead end, which is like, look at the arts. You had vaudeville, then there was radio, then there was film, then there was TV, now there's the internet. And I remember when I was visiting my father and coming home to the apartment where I was staying in Riverdale, I would sometimes stop at the kosher Chinese restaurant, which has now been replaced by another one. Now, I'll never forget what I saw. A family came in, father and a mother with young children. They sat down at the table, and the father and mother took out the box and looked at the box. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And the atomization of society, that people don't even know how to have a conversation anymore with their own children because they're looking at what I call a stupid box, is probably going to cause a reaction in a good sense, where people will discover, well, what could we do in the evening? When there was radio, people would sit around listening to the radio, but that's not so interactive. Maybe they would play the banjo or the violin, and people do more things themselves. It would seem to me that the skills, call it drama therapy, call it what you want, of people learning how to be together again, and have a conversation, will make it a little bit more structured. Let's do, like the game charades or some kind of role playing, so that people can learn the lost art of conversation, whether it's through music or dance, because I can't see how it can go on eventually that people gather in a room and everyone just looks at a box. It was bad enough the last years. I'd pass neighbors on the street. I'd say good morning. They wouldn't respond. And then I realized they didn't hear me. They had the CD player and the earphones. So little by little, they were disconnecting themselves from the world around them. That is very dangerous for mental health. As the Talmud says, "O chavruta metuta," you have, well, who is it, Patrick? Give me fellowship or give me death, or liberty or death. Give me fellowship or give me death. Isolation leads to insanity and death, literally. And as we both know, research shows that as people get older, what's the main cause of decline and death? It's not a lack of vitamins or exercise or food. It's a lack of company.
That's right.
So
Loneliness. Yeah.
loneliness has reached epidemic proportions because the technology evolved far beyond our ability to integrate and use it in an intelligent way. So I imagine that having reached such extremes of disconnection, isolation, and loneliness, it may be a springboard for a renaissance of learning how to interact without a radio, without a TV, without a stupid box, without a movie, without just for people. What are we going to do together? Well, we can sing, we can dance, we can read stories, do what they did for hundreds of years, going back to those storytellers. So I think these skills now are very, very important for the next coming years for the whole world. I think
you're right, Lo, because I find when I do my groups, the patients say, "I never knew that about you. And we've been together here in the hospital 2 months, 3 months, and you're just telling me this." So there's this connection and linking going on, and witnessing and validation. And people learn from each other and grow, and it brings one's soul out and shares, and there's this camaraderie, and it's a wonderful, wonderful therapy. And I see it among my eyes. I see the change and how they, like, I helped one young man do a resume. He never had anybody ever help him. And he said, "Laura, you pulled so much out of me. I didn't even know I could fill up 2 pages with everything I did." And it's just having somebody take that extra step to bring the stories out of them and get it down on paper. That's why writers, Lo, in the film business, the writing is so important. It's the writing and the story and telling that story. And why do people go to the theater? Why do people go to a movie? To escape, to see that story, to identify something maybe in their life that they connect with, that they lived. So it's healing. It's that story. You're right. It's very powerful.
I'm going to pass the next question over to Les. I've already got my next question.
So Laura, I've basically got 2 questions. But what you were talking about storytelling, have you ever, instead of the person writing it down, actually brought in a video and let them tell it on a video, and then you've recorded it? So
I think that's powerful. Yeah. Recording the stories and
for their family and for the next generation, it's an amazing way that they can actually give over their stories, on video, and you actually seeing the person relating their life story. I'll tell you why I mention this. I met somebody who's very involved in as a historian, and she did testimonies of people who lived, basically also survivors, but people who lived in Lithuania, but she did it on cassettes. And today, no one's really interested in the audio cassettes, but they would be exceptionally interested if it was on a video. And in those days, she didn't do it on a video. So it's just an idea that some people can feel very comfortable, not everybody, but some do feel comfortable relating their stories on video. And if it doesn't have to be made public, it could be just private for the own family, for that it can remain within the family. That's from my experience. I found the majority do not mind if it goes public, but there are some that don't want it to be public, and that's also okay. It's just incredible hearing them relate their stories.
It's
Okay.
funny you mentioned that, Les. One of my drama therapy colleagues suggested, Laura, you must perform your story. One day I want you to just perform it and get it out and perform it. And she gave me food for thought, thinking, wow, I do have a lot with my background, and to perform it and tell the story in that capacity is enlightening. And I'm yet to do it and do that performance piece.
So maybe you should record
I
it.
would like to do that
You should maybe
and record it. Mhm.
And then if you, for some reason, can't be at a certain person, but they'd like to see you, then it's there. It can be on somebody's laptop or on their iPad, and they can still enjoy and learn and be healed from your performance that they'll be watching.
I would like to do a PowerPoint presentation. I just have to learn, with going to school right now, I'm so busy, but to learn that technique to do a presentation for folks and tell that story through a PowerPoint presentation, I think is a beginning.
Or even
Put
just,
my mother's rodeo pictures up.
or even just even
Yeah,
a video with you performing on a video, and you've documented it, and then it's for prosperity as well.
right.
Now, the other question,
Thank
though,
you.
if I can just briefly bring in,
Yes, go ahead.
there's a, with what's happened with the circus, and I feel actually very saddened because as a child growing up, I used to love going to the circus. Whenever it came into town, our parents would take us. And with my two girls, unfortunately in Israel, I don't know if you found it, low, but the circus didn't come that often. And when it did come, I did take my girls, but it was not every year. It wasn't a yearly event. It was maybe every 5 years, or I don't know. And they didn't grow up with the same experiences that I had. But the clowns that were in the circus, and I've seen this in some of the hospitals here, there's a medical clown, or the clowns can go to the hospitals and blow up balloons and give it to the children or give it to the old people. And there's such a need for a medical clown as well. So maybe those, clowns that were in the circus can reinvent themselves and become medical clowns. It's just an idea.
I agree. The Big Apple had a clown care unit in New York with the Big Apple Circus. So they were going to all the major hospitals, Columbia, New York Press, Cornell. I think they're still doing it with COVID. I'm not sure. I haven't been in touch with that program, but it was started in New York. It was a good program.
Right,
Okay,
now it's
well,
my turn. Laura, Les is very modest, so I'll have to handle the public relations here. Not everyone's good at running in front of our own chariots, throwing flowers. I actually am not. I'm much better doing it in front of other people's chariots. So Les has a YouTube channel. It's a hobby. He has 30,000, I just checked, 30,815 videos,
Wow.
8,000 subscribers, and 6,233,880 views.
Lal, you know better
Wow.
than me.
It grows about 100,000. Yeah, I just checked. I check pretty much every day, and I would send you every time he passed 100,000. I would send him Myra singing "Miracles Happen" from the movie The Princess Diaries. So this is something that Les knows a lot about. Now, for me, as you know, you were part of that. Most good ideas I got to do anything came from other people. If someone else had to say, I think you do that well, whatever it is, really? I hadn't thought of that. And then I'll do it. You were the one who, when I met you at my father's room, they had that wonderful room overlooking the bridge and the Hudson River, said, "You're raw talent. You're coming with me next week to the Screen Actors Guild," which we did. I still have the photos from that visit with Michelle Kinter. And that whole world was a world that I could only have dreamed about. And I agree with Les that you might want to consider maybe someone making videos of some of the things that you do so that other people could benefit from them. And wait, there was something else. I had so many things I want to ask. What was it I wanted to ask? Okay, mention Les's statistics, which is that, yes, regarding the issue of storytelling and traumas, Les and I have a lot of, he has much more than I do, contact with people who were in the World War II, whether Jews or non-Jews, who went through traumatic experiences, and everyone's different. Some people found it helped them to talk about things, and others the opposite. And everyone's different. I know that in Aaron Beck, right? What's it called? Not behavioral therapy, the one where you don't talk, you just do stuff. What's that called? There's a name for it, where it's not you sit down and talk. They thought not only is it useless, they thought that's destructive. Don't talk, just do. Find something to do and get out of your head by doing stuff. Oh God, what's it called? What that therapy called?
Psychoanalytical therapy?
No, it's the other kind. You know, let's ask the next question. I'll go look it up. Not come.
Laura, can you give us maybe just one or two of the
I found,
stories?
wait a sec, I found it. It's called cognitive behavioral
Oh,
therapy.
cognitive behavioral, right.
Yeah, so Aaron Beck, I think he's still alive, from the University of Pennsylvania. I think I have his book. Says, as Solomon says, as a man thinks, so he is. And the best way to control our thoughts and feelings is primarily by doing things, not by talking. He had not that you should have to be a monk in a Trappist monastery and take a vow of silence. But the best form of therapy is push a little old lady in a wheelchair or bounce a basketball, do something. Don't talk about it, do about it. That's his basic approach. I would agree. So now I go back to Les. I just had to look that up.
Okay. Laura, maybe if you could relate just one or two of the stories that the patients have told you without mentioning names, just that we have an idea of the type of work that you do or patients that you've been in contact with. Do they relate their stories of their life with you or the experiences or just funny incidents?
Well, I start with my drama therapy sessions with warm-ups, and we do a scene where each of us, for example, I'll say, what are 3 things you would never guess about me? And each one of them we'll try to guess 3 things about what we would not guess about them. And it's amazing what comes up. And then I might do another warm up. If you had this key, what would this key open? And what would you want to see happen? Because we use keys in so many different ways to drive, where we live, where we work. Keys open up so many doors. And I just find from the warm up, then I take it a step further and we go into a role play. And I might pair each of them up in 2s and they'll interview each other. And then they're going to have to present to the group what they learned about their partner, and their partner's going to present what they learned about them. So it becomes very unique because you're hearing all these different stories, what they learn from each other. And so it's a way to open them up and share and process and witness and validate. So the stories are powerful, and then they feel comfortable, because when they see, at first they might feel intimidated or not willing to share. But once they've had that warm up and that trust, and they start to trust me, they see that it's fun, and it gets them involved, and then they want to do more of it. And the laughter that comes from it when they see their colleague who they didn't expect to go into character and perform that story, it's nice. It's always laughter from my room. the other staff members say it's drama therapy with Laura because they hear the laughter coming from the room.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
That's really lovely.
So
Thank
now it's my turn, so we can go back and forth. Les and I haven't done this for a few years. Actually, I haven't done any interviews with anyone. That's different from our lecture series since August 2019. And Les and I did some together. This is turning into the first one we're doing in a couple of years. So you can see that when you go to Les's channel, I don't know how Les does it, because he seems to be able to be in 900 places all at once. But he does this countless numbers of interviews with those who are still alive, who want to talk about their lives from what happened in World War II. And we have a lot of trauma victims of Israel from many different backgrounds. As you can imagine, it's a very stressful, high-intensity society with a lot of conflict between different ethnic and religious groups. I'm going to check, not now, but I'm going to do my homework, get back in a few days to both of you about drama therapy in Israel. Could you, my next question would be, in terms of drama therapy, you mentioned the Dr. Marino and the gentleman, Phil Jones, I think from England, who is still alive. How has this spread in different countries? And are there countries where, again, depending on the culture, people are more receptive to it as opposed to being less receptive to it? I mean,
I'm
there are
not sure.
there are
Yeah.
cult, like when you go north, the so-called cold cultures where people are less physically demonstrative. That doesn't mean they don't have feelings, they just express them differently. You go south to the warmer countries, the Mediterranean cultures, where people talk with their hands and are more physically open, depending on the climate and the geography.
I know that it's popular. I'm not sure in what areas of drama therapy that maybe they're doing, more research. That's a good question, Lowell, to find out and explore with my colleagues, because we have drama therapists all over the United States and the UK. We connect with them at conferences every year. And the last two conferences were virtual, which I didn't participate with because with my work and school schedule, it just didn't work out for me. But I know that they're practicing as far as Australia. We've had a drama therapist from Australia, and it's branching out and it's growing. So I think it continues to grow. And I know England is very much ahead of us with it. They come up with other techniques and research, and it's wonderful that we have that collaboration with the UK, because it only helps us to grow and learn. And I'm happy to know we have the conference every year. Yeah.
I'll ask a question. Laura, you dealing with, say, older patients, have you ever come across situations where, like, say, a grandfather is estranged from grandchildren or from their own children, and maybe you as a drama therapist could bridge the gap and through drama therapy reunite or reconnect the family members that have been estranged? Has that ever happened, or could that ever happen?
It does happen. I give them the tools to reconnect with their family members. I've had that happen, and they look for ways of, I do the empty chair role play. I put their father or their mother or their brother or sister in that chair, and I say to them, what is it that you want to tell them that you haven't told them in years?
It's amazing.
And you want to get it out. So they role play with the chair, and then it builds them up to make that beginning, to make a phone call, to write a letter, to have their caseworker, their team, work with them to explore that family dynamic once they leave the hospital. They have a team working, it's called an ACT team. And that ACT team works with them. And I've seen success and I see it,
Wow.
and it's wonderful.
They
Yeah.
must give you a tremendous sense of satisfaction, reconnecting and reuniting family members that have been
And it's
estranged.
also, it's interesting you use reconnecting and reuniting, but it's also where I teach them too to be independent, to not depend on mommy or daddy, because it only does them more harm if they can't be independent and learn for themselves, to make a break and show their parents that they can be independent, they can do their own thing, and have that chance to do it, to know what it's like, even though they have their illness that they're working with. It allows them to grow and make a new start in life, and then write a new chapter. Because I tell them it was hard for me growing up. I didn't have anybody helping me. So it only made me stronger and a survivor. And when they hear my story, and some of them come from very privileged homes in Westchester, Connecticut, you name it, and were pampered their whole life, it does more harm than good. So if they learn those skills to be independent and go out on their own, because I say to them, what if you didn't have mommy or daddy? How are you going to survive? So think of how you're going to go forward on your own. It's great that you still have your parents, but you have to know that you have to have that skill and you have to learn it and work with it. But you take somebody like me to make it reality, to face, to hear, to take it in, to process it.
Wow. So I'm just going to
what I was going to mention. Yes, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
All right. About cultures and different cultures. I'm not really a fan of it. I have nothing against it, but there's these Japanese cartoons, Kanja and Manja, which began in Japan and became phenomenally popular in Western Europe, the United States. These you even have movies made with these strange kind of cartoon characters, but it's not like Walt Disney cartoons. Manja, I have to look that up. There are two art forms that, again, began in one country and became phenomenally popular in other countries, certainly in the Western countries. I know in the Arab world, there are two singers. One has been dead for 30 years. Her name is Khaltoum. She was a single woman, not from a rich family. Her father noted she had musical talent, and she wrote her own music. It's hard for us to understand what she and Fairuz, who's about 84 and lives in Lebanon, is from a Christian background, mean to Muslims, especially the Arab Muslim world is very patriarchal. But ask any Arab, mention any kid here, Khaltoum. Oh, you know about Khaltoum. When they finish the mosque in the morning, they listen to Khaltoum. She's been dead 30 years. When they finish the mosque in the evening, they listen to Fairuz. She's still alive. And these were ladies where they can sing a song, they start chanting, they can go on for an hour. Now, talk about star power. No disrespect to Michael Jackson and Madonna and the Beatles. This lady's been dead for 30 years, but all over the Arab world, I'm not sure if the general Muslim world, every person listens to Khaltoum if you go to the morning, and Fairuz, the jewel of Lebanon, the rose of Lebanon, in the evening. Now that's cultural power. When you can, I don't know why it is these two ladies, and that they're ladies also in a male society, are have a status. So that's what I was driving at with something like drama therapy, where it would be received differently in different countries. Maybe some countries say, well, well, we really can't do something like that. Maybe we'd feel silly. I don't know how the Japanese would feel about it. It's that the kabuki theater, everything's very structured and organized and disciplined. That's what I was driving at. And I did want to mention that many years ago, in fact, I even remember where I was. The Tarrytown Lakes. So I was driving around there on the way home to my parents in one of the visits, and on the radio, there was a report about how Shakespeare was being used in prisons in Les's country, where he came from, South Africa. And for some reason, the prison system found that when they had mostly boys who were in there for causing various forms of trouble, did Shakespeare and got a role. Okay, you be King Lear, you be Macbeth, you be Henry VIII. It actually helped them improve for some reason. So this was fascinating to me. This was before I actually went and did those student films in the October, November. It was all very quick of 2011, where I had read in one of my books on autism that people with Asperger's profile liked acting because of the defined role playing. I think that's a key concept, whether one is on the spectrum or not, defined role playing. Not everyone's going to get up and be improv, sing and dance and feel fine to express yourself. But if it's defined role playing, say, okay, now you be Marie Antoinette. You be, I don't know, here, read this from Julius Caesar. And this is what's very good about the English public school system, which means private school, because they drive on the wrong side of the road and they call public schools private schools, is especially the boys are trained from an early age to do public speaking. One thing I read in my research is people are more afraid of public speaking than sharks. Leave me out. After I saw Jaws, I won't go in the ocean anymore. I just won't. I don't mind scuba diving because I can see what's around me, but I can't stand being in the water thinking what might be right below my feet till today. But more people are more scared of public speaking than snakes, spiders, and sharks. Paranoid, terrified. So what do? They get the little boys from when they're very little and say, okay, take this, stand in front of the class and read. You don't have to be Churchill. And even Churchill had a lisp and a stutter that he had to overcome to become Churchill. Say, read this. I don't know, if I was running the educational system, which in Israel and America, I think is a complete disaster and waste of money, I say, okay, skip all these courses you don't need. Let's get down to basics. And one of them is, I would say, okay, everybody has to learn, do physical stuff. It will make kids less nervous. Dance, sing. You don't have to be Fred Astaire and you don't have to be Ethel Merman. Just be yourself and do that because it's very therapeutic. And again, once you get past it, someone will think I'm silly or stupid or I'm not perfect. Get rid of all that. Just sing and dance and tell your story and don't worry about being perfect. Like Julia Cameron says, don't think it up, just write it down. Don't be perfect, just be finished. You can't argue with that for simple reason because she's right. So I would introduce that into the educational system right away. It's simple. It doesn't require any fancy equipment. And again, oftentimes, well, Les might know this from Yiddish. Remember the Jewish hotels in the Catskills in the 30s and 40s and 50s? They understood that many people were self-conscious. They had the tummeler, whose job was to entertain everyone. And they had something which showed a wonderful sense of concern for feelings. Maybe there were some girls who weren't so pretty and weren't being asked to dance. There was a guy, his job was to go and ask the girls to dance. Well, if you're from religious background, we don't have mixed dancing, but that didn't apply there. If someone was sitting alone, his job was to go and ask her to dance. Someone had no one to talk to, that someone would sit down and talk to them. I think that's a wonderful, humane tradition that you paid someone to do that. And most people are not, like you and I are good at the arts, singing, dancing, improvisational theater, but most people are not, very self-conscious. That the defined role playing is very important, because say, okay, you don't have to forget about being spontaneous. That's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Here, sing this, read that, go, you're on. And also to get people used to, some people, aside from trauma, are afraid to be in a video, or they don't like the sound of their voice. They don't like the way they look. Everybody, we can't see ourselves as others, and to get over that is not easy. Say, okay, lights, camera, action. Many people that drop dead before they say record. No, they freeze.
Lowell, you know what that's called? Theater of spontaneity. Marino was big into that. Theater of spontaneity, just letting it all come out, spontaneous.
I'm going to pass it back to Les now. We're coming to, it's almost 9 o'clock, so we'll have to conclude, but I want to give the last question to him, and we want to give the last comment to you.
Okay, so it's not really a question, it's just an observation. Laura, I asked you for aspiring students, aspiring teenagers that want to go into the field that you're in as drama therapists, what qualities or what should they look for? And I think your presentation tonight and you speaking to us, you've shown us you have to be, and this is what you really are, you're passionate. You're passionate about what you do, and you're caring. You are so caring about, I think, each and individual patient that you see, each and individual person that you come into contact with. And that's why you're so successful. And that's why it comes across, because it's from your heart. And I think from, Lowell and me, listening to your incredible presentation tonight, it really, really, it just overflows your sincerity and your devotion to your profession. And it's really been an absolute delight to hear just the most amazing work that you do and the most important work that you do. And we just hope that you get registered very quickly, because there's a lot of people that need your services. And on behalf of the Root and Branch and Lowell, I'm so grateful to you for including me in this. It's been such an honor and a privilege to hear you tonight. So I want to really thank you.
Thank you, Les. Thank you so much. And you're right, I do care. And I had a patient tell me that he could tell that I really cared. And that meant so much to him. And he said the same thing you said to me, that you're good at what you do, Laura, because you really care. And that means a lot, and you can't fake it. It's got to be real. And
it's very real.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. And I hope your friendship and your connection with Lowell continues to, it's amazing. You both are very special, and really it's been such a pleasure to hear you tonight.
I always will continue to carry his dad's memory with me and continue that friendship. They were like family. His family were like my family. And the Hebrew home's a ghost town now. Nobody's allowed to go there. And it's a whole different world there. I want to go back there and visit so much, but it's just not happening right now. But I call in and I give messages to say hello to our friends there, Lowell, Dave, and the director of volunteers. And yeah, thank you both.
Laura,
it's been a wonderful time together.
I couldn't agree more. All the very, very best.
Thank you, Les. Thank you, Lowell. Take care. God bless.
God bless. Bye.